We had a couple guests today. We had Caitlin and
Carla.
sounds similar.
Carla or Carlin?
Carla.
Carla.
And from Ontario County sustainability area, and dealing with what's going to happen with the landfill in 2028. That's a question on a lot of people's minds, and I don't know if there's any answers will be arrived at today, but hopefully we're heading in the direction of focusing in on something that I know there have been a couple of presentations lately. I sat in on one that you were answering questions for a couple of weeks ago, noontime thing.
That was great.
It was very informative, and I thought maybe it'd be a good time to invite you guys over and just let this group know what's happening. We have a it's a big question to us right now because we have squirreled away quite a bit of money in the reserve to update or replace or rebuild our transfer station. And like all governments, we find ourselves in a situation now where we have more needs than we have resources, and we do have a considerable pot of money there. So it's been a very topical thing during it, putting together our budget for next year. Jen has been working diligently on here lately. So just wanted to see what you guys would have to say, and if you have any insight. We don't have anybody from the board of supervisors here, so you can feel free to talk.
Yeah. But you said we were recording though, right?
Well, it doesn't work very well here.
It'll stop working
They
in
don't
like
want
5
to.
minutes. So don't worry.
This will cut out in about 2 minutes.
Yeah. All good things. So I think, as I mentioned, and as you know, this has been a long discussion, and it's something that our office has been really advocating for, to have this discussion, because regardless of what happens to the landfill, there's obviously going to be a lot of planning that has to be involved to adjust either way for residents. So about a year ago, the Board of Supervisors hired MSW Consultants, which is a firm out of Florida. They specialize in solid waste planning. They really look at it more as like a utility or an infrastructure. And so they really help communities that are looking to implement programs, change programs. They are heavily involved in waste assessments and trying to figure out what the composition of communities' waste streams are. And so they were hired over a year ago by the board to basically look at alternatives. You know, over the years, we've heard a lot of feedback from people. Some is the town of Seneca's had a landfill not long enough. Let's put one somewhere else. Or I've had a ton of people, and I know Caitlin's the same when we're doing community presentations where they say, why don't we have an incinerator? So, okay, so we'll look at that. So MSW in their analysis went through some of those options and were able to kind of rule them out right off the bat. Having a new landfill in Ontario County, or quite frankly, anywhere in New York State, is just not realistic based on permitting and quite frankly, people's appetite for having a solid waste facility in their community. It's not realistic to think that that's gonna happen. And additionally, New York State's policies are kind of moving away from that, right? They're towards circular economy, focusing on reduction, capturing organics. So they really want to get away from a reliance on landfills as a means of disposal. Additionally, there's legislation that's been passed in our areas relative to the Finger Lakes and siting incinerators. So the report shows there are very few locations in this county where we can actually site an incinerator. So when we get down to what does solid waste infrastructure look like, they looked at the county's existing property and what potential there was for expansion of the site. And so they worked with a company, CEC, that's a solid waste engineering firm with offices all over the country. And so they did some engineering estimates and came back and said, you really have two options for utilizing the landfill. You can go a little bit wider, which is considered a lateral or horizontal expansion, And that will get you about 700,000 cubic yards of capacity, which at today's volume is 1 year. Or you can go vertically, which requires way less capital investment because you've already lined the facility. And based on their estimates, there's the potential to go 140 feet higher at the apex.
How high is it right now? I mean,
Oh,
roughly.
you know what, I really need to write that down. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it's in the report.
It's the tallest
so I
mountain in
can
Seneca.
So they went through various iterations, and for the purposes of the report, said if the landfill was gonna expand, really the vertical would be most likely, because you're gonna get the most airspace for the least amount of capital. And so they went through there's various scenarios in this report that show, okay, what about if we didn't go 140 feet? What about if we went half of that? How much airspace is there? And then at different volumes, how long does it last? So there's the status quo, which is kind of 700,000 tons per year is what the landfill's been accepting for the past 3 years or so. Even though it's permitted to just over 900,000, they've been operating below it, closer to the county level when the county ran the landfill. And then there's a scenario for half that volume, which is 350,000 a year. And then there's a scenario for county waste only, which is about 100,000 tons per year. And so the report lays out how much that how long that airspace would last at those various levels. The report also looks at closing the facility entirely and the options for export. So what are gonna be the economic impacts if all of a sudden we kind of just leave it up to the market and say, everybody who has curbside hauling is gonna just get a bigger bill from their curbside subscription service, and our municipalities are gonna have to figure out what those tip fees look like based on what facility they end up going to. So the ranges, when they did they kind of made cold calls and got tipping fees for the area landfills, which ranged from, I think it was $58 a ton to $100 a ton. You guys are closer to right now to like $41 a ton, $42 a ton. So that's kind of the area depending on where you go. And then there was one other option that they proposed, which was, what about if the county constructed a transfer station, a commercial scale transfer station? Probable location would be the landfill site, where instead of local small trucks coming and dumping at the landfill, they would dump in a large building, it would get consolidated and sent out via transfer. The idea there was that the county would then have an economy of scale to leverage volume into a different landfill to get a better rate, better tip fee. So that scenario is in there as well. That also has a higher tip fee than you're used to now, because now we're double handling the material. It's gonna get dropped, loaded, consolidated, and then we're gonna have to pay a tip fee somewhere else too. So all those options are laid out in here. The economics of that are in there. Another thing that I think is kind of, I don't wanna say it's getting lost, but it's kind of playing second fiddle to the landfill discussion, is the recycling facility is also part of the current contract with Casella. So Casella operates a zero sort MRF on the property that has the same expiration date.
Oh.
So in 2028, that lease is up. And so there has to be a discussion too about what the county wants to do with the recycling facility. The county owns the building, but does not own the equipment that's inside of it. So if there were to be any discussion, even regardless of the landfill, I keep on telling people this is kind of like a menu, right? It's okay to say, I want this and this, not this without this. Like, it's not one or the other. We can have a discussion about all the things that are in here. So regardless of what happens with the landfill, there also has to be a discussion about if the recycling facility is going to continue to operate, and there will be procurement requirements for that. We can't just extend a lease. We'd have to go out to RFP to find an operator for that operations. And just like they did with the landfill, MSW has information here on that. And it is perhaps a more stark contrast than the waste discussion, because we've been paying 0 tip fees for recycling for 2 decades in this county. Even our residents, I think something that we thought was in the best interest of our residents 20 years ago is it's gonna be a difficult change, even at people who have subscription service with curbside recycling. You know, if me at my house, I might be paying $5 to $7 a month just to rent the recycling toter, but I'm not having a tip fee passed through to me.
Right.
And recycling tip fees right now are closer to like the $8,600, $86 to $100 range per ton for recycling. It's a very process intensive process. So the concern is when recycling costs more than municipal solid waste, what happens to your recycling? So
You don't understand, as this goes away, there's gonna be paying a lot higher taxes.
So all those things are in there. There's also a discussion about organics, which I think is important too. They used a subcontractor, J&L Consulting, who has experience working with the United Nations, setting up organics facilities, composting facilities. And so there's some discussion in there about source separating food waste, utilizing digesters, setting up static road composting. So there's all these options of potential things that the county could do, or they could just say, we don't wanna do any of it and let the private industry take over where there's a need or where there's a gap. So that's really what the Board of Supervisors are tasked with right now, is trying to figure out what role, if any, they wanna play in managing waste in the county. As you know, really the only role they've played to date is that we have these 2 solid waste facilities, the landfill and the recycling facility. And then we have our department that's trying to encourage reduction, recycling, backyard composting, things like that. So the board is gonna continue to look at that. The goal is that they make some sort of policy decision by the end of the year. Really, just like you have a pot of money, we kind of have a pot of money that we've been, the Casella lease payments have been going into a solid waste reserve. So we can figure out, after this policy decision is made, what we need to do, whether it's investment in infrastructure or additional programs or whatever it is, to try to use the next 3 years to get our residents to a place where the impact of whatever decision it is might not be as difficult.
How large is that pot, Carl? Do you have any idea?
I would, yeah, it's millions. I would have to get back to you on the exact one.
How much time does 140 foot buy?
You know what, I thought that might get asked, so I typed it. Let's see, at what fill level? At the current fill level, it would get us to 2037. Half of that, it would be 2043. And for county waste only, it would be 2083. If you go half, so don't go nearly as high, but just go half as high, at current fill level, 700,000 tons a year, it's 2033. For if you do half, 350,000 tons a year, it's 2038. And if it was for county waste only, it would be 2057.
No, Casellas is not interested in continuing to manage the landfill unless we do the current fill rate, is that correct?
I don't know that that's correct.
Okay.
I think that whatever decision's made, we would have to put an RFP out, right? So just like we have a 25-year lease agreement, and that's what law allows us to have a maximum of. So we would have to go out to RFP regardless, so it could be any operator. It could be Casella, it could be Waste Management, it could be Waste Connections. There's also the potential that the county operates it again. There's been various back and forth with that. There is some language in the existing contract with Casella where they basically assumed all environmental liability of the site when they took over, including areas that were operated by the county way back in the 70s. So that's an important environmental protection, I think, from the county's perspective,
Does
or
that
liability
end,
protection.
does that end if we aren't working with them in the future?
So there is some question about to what extent and where their liability ends if anyone else other than them operates the site. So certainly, one of the things, if we decided to move into a continue utilizing the landfill scenario, county would have to engage outside counsel to make sure that whatever protections they have in place are carried through or managed in the way that's appropriate.
If Casella, if you went the route where you put on RFP and we continue in some vein, they, of course, having been associated for 20-some years, kind of know the lay of the land and all, and they gives them a little inside shot at perhaps landing that contract, but if they are not involved, what we've heard is that protection goes away, the county would have to assume those areas at least that when Casella wasn't involved, which is like the base,
Yeah.
which is like holding the whole thing up. So
Right, so yeah, I think we would definitely need legal counsel on that for sure. If the board was to make that decision, they would wanna go into that very open-eyed and have.
is there any consensus at all amongst supervisors or
I would say,
staff, or I mean, any one of those scenarios that?
so certainly staff has no
But-
opinion about it.
Well, I mean, but you can give advice or, I mean, sorting through everything. I mean, it's quite a variety of
I think,
possibilities there that,
yeah, I think in the conversations I have, there are, I've heard, and I've even heard from residents who are pretty vocal about not having or not being okay with the landfill the way it is, that there would be some level of okayness with a county-only facility, 100,000 tons a year.
Yeah.
But
Does
then I
that change the
also,
tip rate though? I would
yes.
assume
Much
because
more
like,
expensive.
you're not collecting all that other revenue,
Right,
right?
and that might be, I mean, that's why the RFP is so important, going through that process, because at that level, it might be where the county had to pay someone to operate it, and at that point in time, does it make sense? So, this discussion and the timeline by the end of the year is so important, because if there's any decision to move forward in any way, even with the recycling facility, we need to go through RFPs, permitting. So we're really, we're down to the wire here in terms of having
Yeah.
any disruption in service.
any idea on how long permitting would be? Time period, I mean, is
So that's
it 3 years perhaps?
and so that's referenced in here. It could be anywhere from 2 years to 6 years.
You get involved with permitting different things and
No, it's,
I mean-
it can be difficult, yeah, working, because you gotta work with DEC, so you're dealing with people in Albany, you know. That's,
well,
It's-
I
it's
think
never
it's safe
easy.
to say that cost will go up in the future.
And-
Under any of those
Yes.
scenarios.
And just to finish my other thought too, I wanna make sure I acknowledge that while there have been some people who said, oh, we'd be okay with the county landfill, there is also a large majority of people who are just done with it. So I wanna make sure I say
On the
that
tax
too,
rate
that.
after, once it closes,
Yeah.
they'll
that too.
probably change their mind.
Just
Nobody
make it go
wants to
away.
have a
Stop
landfill in
putting
our
trash
county.
That's called the
No one
Fletcher
wants it.
solution.
We're done.
We all wish there wasn't a landfill in our county.
You didn't need to do the study though, they could
But
have
it's
went
just,
to the people of the Chronicles and got all the answers.
So, yeah, so that's an accurate statement. I think even under a scenario where we kept everything going the way it is not likely that we're gonna have free recycling anymore.
Mm.
That's been something that I think.
how did we get free recycling to begin with?
Well, 2 decades ago, I think commodities were worth more.
Okay,
And so there was a point where, Excel was even giving rebates to people because they were getting so much on it that they would give, like and they still do it to some extent with cardboard. If they get clean cardboard in from a lot of people, they might give them a certain amount back for the tonnage they take in because it's worth something to them.
what about like metal, like metal, it's just true that we have a whole metal recycling bin, but would that be included in the recycling number as well?
No, it's really just single stream recycling. That's a part of the study because that's what they handle. They don't take these.
Town of Victor separates their cardboard right now currently.
Yeah, so does South Bristol.
So I don't know what their revenue stream is from that, but that would be something that we would be talking about additional equipment and also maintenance. I don't know if they bail it in Victor or how they handle it,
No, I think they have a compactor
compactor.
and it goes out.
You've done a very good job explaining this to us.
And
What's your role at the
Hardwood
county?
Works is do this.
Okay,
I'm the director of sustainability and solid waste. for Ontario.
That's making us so much about this.
Yeah, I have 10 years experience in the solid waste industry too. I used to work for Casella over a decade ago in their engineering and compliance branch. So I have a lot of experience with solid waste and these programs, and I'm lucky to have staff like Caitlin and Regina, who's not here, but I think some of you know as well.
You've done a very good job explaining this to us this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Is there a particular, there's a particular group within the county, one of the committees that's dealing with this and
Yeah.
looking at bringing something back to the full board with
Yes.
a recommendation? Is there any indication of a timeline or anything that?
So the home committee for this is the Planning and Environmental Quality Committee. They're meeting this Tuesday. And I will say that I think the county administration, the chairman of the board, chairman of that committee have been very adamant about making sure that the full board gets all of the information. So the full board was literally handed this. There was a board workshop. There's actually 2 board workshops with the consultant to share the information. So as much as it's like a committee topic, I think everybody understands the importance of the discussion. And so the full board has been given all of the information as a part of the discussion. Like I said, I think the goal is to have some sort of policy decision or direction by the end of the year. So that gives them about 3 more cycles to continue with discussions and.
almost like you have 2 projects, between the MRF and the solid waste. And where that's gonna end up in 3 years, cost wise for all of us.
And if you look in here too, they actually show like where the next closest facilities are, so you can kind of get an idea. I think everybody knows around here, we generally have their other landfills, right? High Acres is not too far from here, Seneca Meadows, Mill Seats and Riga, even Steuben County landfills, it's an hour away.
Let me ask you this, if whatever decision they make, and if there comes a point of 3 years from now, we're not ready, what happens going to that 4th year to waste and recycling? Let's say there's a pause in taking waste. Is there a report mentioning anything about work? Nothing.
And then I think the one thing the report does mention too is that the report is all based on information that's available now. So I think most people know Seneca Meadows has a pending permit. If they don't get that permit, they have a year left. So if Seneca Meadows closes, that's 2 million tons of waste that is gonna be in the market with no place else to go. And then if the Ontario County landfill closes, that's another 700,000 tons that's out there. And so then you have that competition for the resource or for the disposal capacity. So
Ohio's gonna make some serious money.
right. So I think that that's one of the things they've also tried to caveat in here. It's the best that we can do with the information that we have now. And in the meantime, you're absolutely right. We need to make sure we talk about recycling. We need to talk about organics and food waste and getting that out of the waste stream. There have been some supervisors who have been very vocal about that. If we really spend the next few years trying to reduce the amount of waste we produce, then the impact isn't as large. You know, if we're taking 30% of the organics out of our waste stream, then that's 30% less that would be charged to tip fee on it.
What's the chance
Still
that
have
you,
70% to get rid of.
what's the chance you get that much of an impact in the next 3 years though, to start programs like that?
Yeah, it would require a lot of investment and quite frankly enforcement.
Yeah.
Opening the bags to see if there's any. I mean,
Right,
How do
I
you,
would,
you know-
we've had that conversation, particularly with impacts to recycling is, if we're gonna have a recycling law that's enforceable and recycling costs more to get rid of than municipal solid waste, like we need to figure out how we're gonna enforce that.
And I think this committee is well aware of enforcement issues around
Yeah.
solid waste and transfer stations and the difficulty they can pose.
Has there been any discussions with the, I mean, the bulk of the waste comes from outside the county. Discussions with those people, whoever they are, coming in that we have this problem and, you know, not blame them, but certainly the vast majority of the waste is from outside. You guys need to start thinking about alternatives also.
So I think that they are, I think I've seen, goodness, I can't remember what county it was recently, but they've actually commissioned a study for an incinerator because they recognize that disposal capacity in Western New York is going away and they can't ship it. There is a county in Eastern New York that has started that process. There is some discussion in here about just disposal capacity in the Northeast in general, and it's dwindling. You have states that have passed landfill bans, Connecticut, Massachusetts, where whatever they had, when it was closed, it closed, and so they started exporting. And now the state's beyond, it's not the Beyond Waste Plan now, but the state solid waste management plan actually references for the first time in a long time, it does not talk about New York being self-sufficient in terms of disposal capacity. In all their previous iterations, there was discussion about, we wanna make sure we have the capacity to dispose of what we create, because a lot of people don't recognize this, but for the longest time, New York State was actually a net exporter of waste, because you have the New York City waste and things like that leaving the state on rail and barge. And so this newest plan was the first time the state removed that language and kind of tongue-in-cheek said, we're okay with exporting it.
Okay.
We'll start exporting it too.
These, the landfill closures will also have other, cost implications. We were talking about this before you guys got in here. Municipal biosolids will become a major issue. So like whatever your wastewater costs are, if the city of Canandaigua can't get rid of their biosolids the way they've been getting rid of it, that gonna greatly increase the cost.
Yeah, we've had quite a few conversations with a lot of our municipalities that operate wastewater treatment plants, because that's absolutely correct. And not only biosolids is, it's not only like a cost increase, but a lot of landfills don't want it. They don't want it as a waste stream, and it doesn't matter how much you're willing to pay them. We had a local community that wanted, like, we basically shopped around for them to try to get a better tipping fee, because they weren't sure they were okay with the one here. And I couldn't find a place that would take it in the area. I called 4 landfills and all of them said, no, thank you. So we've been talking to some of our communities too about looking at capital for composting biosolids and going down that. And then on that side of the spectrum, you get all the other legislation about composting biosolids and spreading biosolids and PFAS.
Right.
So there's a lot.
Yeah, if you have PFAS, you're in a world of hurt.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot that's going on with that.
Our society has really created quite a situation. In Europe, they do a lot of incineration. And Europe is much more densely populated than we are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to be, at least I'm no expert, I read little bits and pieces here and there. It doesn't seem to be a big concern to people over there, that they use whatever technology they can to scrub, to clean, remove anything from. But you are burning these materials and releasing that nasty, nasty CO2 into the atmosphere. So I mean, you have that situation, close to incinerate. There's a certain group of people who say, you burn it, you're putting more CO2 up. I mean, this whole thing is like nobody wants any part of any of it, but yet we have to deal with it.
It's a difficult discussion.
And the report does talk a little bit more, it goes into depth into the incinerators, waste to energy. And it's not just regulations that they can only go in certain areas. the economics are also not there. We don't produce enough waste, correct, to make it economically viable for there. We can only guarantee what's produced within the county.
Well, and
With-
there's some question about what we can even guarantee, right? If the county doesn't have a consolidation point, we don't have ownership on it, right? You would, like the town of Canandaigua could work with the town of Victor and the town of Bristol, and everybody could kind of like go out for an RFP together to try
Put an
to
incinerator
get
next to the
some
new water
value.
tower. Yeah.
But
Emerson Road.
we can't,
Well-
we don't.
I mean, when you talk about, you know, the economics like that, costs are gonna go up. I mean, if there's a delta there, the cost differential, that cost is gonna be laid in everybody. I mean, it's,
And that's something we struggle with a little bit, just talking with people, because quite frankly, there's always been a cost to things. There's always been a cost to recycling. It's a separate truck, a separate person, a
Right.
separate delivery, like it's employees, gas, fuel, processing. But because people think of it as like a good thing,
Yeah.
they don't think it should cost anything. And the same thing is with organics, right? When you separate food waste, you think, oh, I'm doing the right thing, I'm separating it out. But again, there's still a cost to collect it, to transport it, to process it.
Unless you're doing it in your backyard.
Right.
Which is
Right.
what we try.
And so they may be less, for sure, but that's something that we kind of struggle with too, is trying to figure out like how to make sure we communicate to people that all of these things have costs.
So I'm hearing is regardless, the next 3 years, the municipalities will find a way to pass this cost off if transfer stations stay in place. If we're gonna be consolidating down here, if things don't move on. Recycling is gonna cost more and a way to remove some of the stream for revenue. Is, like in 3 years, is kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think that and maybe it's time to like go back and relook at that transfer station consolidation study that we did years and years ago. To say, okay, maybe municipalities need to work together and we do like pay as you throw system and the users of the facility pay for the cost of it. So that's an option too, and that's what we're kind of waiting for some direction on, because like I said, we have this reserve, so what do we spend that money on? Do we move down resource recovery park? Are we looking at supporting composting? Are we looking at supporting municipal consolidation of facilities? What can we do as the county to try to help make that transition?
how do you get buy-in from the population to participate in that education, you know, workshops, different, you know,
And
I
with
mean,
that-
to get that, we had, when I was a kid, it was a little different situation, you had a garbage can, and you had a burn barrel, you probably, you know.
You
Guys like us.
You know, that, so I don't know, so.
But, you know, the newspapers, cardboard,
Yep.
anything was combustible, wasn't that old 55-gallon drum out and back in a match. Garbage, house, you know, food scraps, all of that, garbage can, guy would pick that up every week. He used to put it in a place where you couldn't do that now. But, I mean, now it's,
And that's part of this, that's part of the lift we have too, is like not everybody's coming from the same place, right? Caitlin goes into schools, we go into schools where we're educating about recycling and little kids are saying, well, we burn our garbage. So where do I put my recycling, right? It's been illegal to burn garbage for decades. So those people are gonna be more difficult to say you need to recycle and you need to separate out your food waste, right? If they're.
Do you ask them what their addresses are?
You know somebody who can go.
Top of the country, that one.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and
My
that's the
next
other
door
thing,
neighbor.
is I mean, it was years ago, we talked to the sheriff about, like, there are some communities that have part-time deputies that, respond to illegal dumping, burning, recycling contamination. And it's just so difficult to get law enforcement for road patrol and the corrections facilities and things like that to say, like, you wanna divert someone to go respond to a tire somebody threw off a road. It's not, it's not there, it's right now.
A lot of
So how are
questions
we
and not
gonna-
a lot of answers.
If recycling costs twice as much as garbage, how are we gonna keep people from just throwing their recycling into their trash? Like, that's a real problem. Like, I would think that would be if we have a facility here and we're charging people, okay, here's your recycling, and this is, I don't know, $80, a ton, and this is $40 a ton, they're just gonna throw their recycling into their trash.
You force them to use clear bags and you have to monitor it and see what's in it. If it looks like recycling, you charge them more.
Yes.
Or you use the Fletcher solution.
Just get rid of it.
Well, and again,
The transfer station.
the other thing is we do have, so it'll go out for RFP, right? And so, we can put stuff like in that, like we want someone to have provide preferential municipal rates. Whether they do or not, I don't know, but that's something we could see who would be interested in operating the facility. That's not gonna be zero, but maybe it'll be better than 80.
How likely would High Acres or Steuben County be interested in our trash?
So High Acres has plenty of capacity, in terms of lifespan, development at the site. But as I understand it, about 2/3 of their volume is locked up in downstate contracts.
Oh, okay.
So they actually have a rail siding, that like comes up to their facility via rail. They unload the cars, and if you go over the bridge there in Carrington by the ball fields, you can actually see their rail siding, with the gondola trucks there. So they have capacity. Steuben County, I believe, just got a permit expansion, so, they have capacity. Again, I just don't know whether or not we're talking about our trash as 100,000 tons or town of Canandaigua's trash. Or whether we're just gonna let haulers. I think there have been some supervisors who have said like, geez, I don't know that I would operate a transfer station anymore. Maybe we just let subscription haulers take over.
Which towns bring the most trash and recycling to your family?
You guys are up there.
That's what
I think
Yes.
that one of the highest is the town of Seneca.
Okay.
Which is super surprising given their
Yes.
population, but it's free.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
that's
also free.
awesome.
They pay
It's
nothing.
free here
Right.
too, yeah.
You guys have a larger population, right? So Victor, I think the town of Victor and the town of Canandaigua are two of the higher, but you have higher populations.
And then it's, I think Seneca and Cora.
I think per capita, you guys are much lower because you have a lot more programs at the transfer station. You have electronics, you have food waste, you have metal that are open every time the transfer station's open. So it's, per capita, it's a little bit different than total volume.
Any idea how likely Seneca Meadows is to get their expansion? I mean, that's a rural border contention over there.
Yeah, it is.
It's,
I have heard both sides.
'Cause they only have
I
a
have
year.
heard they're gonna get it, it's just time, and then more recently I've heard that they're not gonna get it.
Well,
So
it's gonna be a
it's all kind
political-
of
Political decision. I mean,
rubber and, at least, yeah, political, definitely in terms of the host community agreement. The one thing I'm having trouble with following there is I don't believe that there's any regulatory requirement for a host community agreement. It's normally something the operator of a landfill offers, as like kind of a sign of goodwill. So if the landfill were to get their permit from DEC without a host community agreement, I'm not sure what would happen then. I don't know enough about the towns involved there to know what regulatory oversight they provide, if any, for Seneca Meadows. I do know, like in our instance, the town of Seneca doesn't issue any of the permits.
is the state, I mean, the state has used Finger Lakes area in western New York as a dumping ground for New York City waste, and used to tow it out in the ocean and dump it, but that can't do that anymore. If everything comes this way, does the state
but you will see incinerators, like there's 3 incinerators on Long Island, that they handle with waste. There has been discussion, I don't think at a state level, about, Rockland County, you can see is the largest contributor to the site, and that's because they have solid waste facilities where they consolidate all of their into a county-owned transfer station, and it all comes up here. So they leverage their entire volume up into here. And they do similar things like we would do if we had a transfer station, we would say we have this much waste, who's gonna give us the best rate?
Right.
So it just so happens in 2023, Casella gave them the best rate for their 188,000 tons, and that's why it came here. But you can see we're the second largest contributor, obviously. Monroe County had just under 70,000 tons that came in, Wayne County had 25, Yates had just under 24, Chemung County had 30,000. So other than those kind of ones along the eastern line there, and Massachusetts, again, is exporting almost everything.
10%.
It's kind of like those little pockets.
Stop them at state line, I mean,
So they're trying to build landfill Vermont
They have
Or
one
some
in
for-
Vermont, yeah,
or somewhere for quite some time.
yeah.
Communities fighting against it for years.
And
years.
Vermont is
bring
really,
Ethan Allen back.
Vermont is really interesting because the entire state, for the longest time, only had 2 landfills in the entire state. One was kind of like central Vermont, and then the one Casella operates is in northern Vermont, and I think they're trying to expand it, which is running into issues there, but,
I know the guy fighting against it.
yeah. I think part of the issue with everybody's doing their own thing is that's kind of what everyone was doing before when we had all these online landfills, like every municipality had their own, at least one.
Yeah, they have
Um,
dumps everywhere.
And then, but in order to be compliant with regulations and have the liner system and the groundwater monitoring and the gas collection and combustion and all the things you need, it's cost prohibitive at that scale. So you need some economy of scale where it can cover the cost of what it takes to operate it. And so that's why I think people generally have moved away from the, like, everybody do their own.
Does the county talk to some of those surrounding counties, you guys? I mean, well, not necessarily you, but the planning committee is taking a look at all of this, that discussions of some kind of collaboration to,
I'm not sure. I think that was the idea behind the one scenario where they said 350,000 tons, because they're like, well, we're about 100,000. And that's about, 250 to 200,000 that could come from Monroe County or Wayne County or whatever. And maybe that little bit of regional effect could help make it,
Offset some costs.
make
Yeah,
it
just
so
wondering.
someone would want to operate it.
what that critical mass would be, how much you have to have before you can have reasonable, whatever that is, cost.
And you almost have to lock them into a multi-year agreement, because they're probably always looking for the cheapest area to get rid of it. So,
And there are some, like, a lot of Wayne County, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't operate any facilities. That's all subscription hauler. Monroe County, the city of Rochester there's a transfer station in the city of Rochester. They have their Riga landfill, Millseed. High Acres operates in Monroe County, even though it's a privately owned and operated facility. But Yates County, I don't think has any county facilities. They have town.
Carla, what's out toward Buffalo? Is that still open? Modern
Yes,
Landfill?
yeah.
That could be,
Yeah, and that is one that they is referenced in here. I think the thing that's gonna be difficult too is the recycling facilities. Is as much as the landfill's a regional landfill right now, the recycling facility is a regional facility as well. Casella is currently importing 85% of their recyclables from out of county, and they're coming from all over. And so when you look at like, okay, where could our stuff go? If not here, there's not a lot of options.
okay.
Because everybody else is sending it to us.
Is that something that could be split, recycling and solid waste? Is that, so we could, so we could continue with recycling and not with solid waste? if we want to.
Yeah, conceivably, yeah.
So if we were to exit, I mean, it's not us exporting 100,000 tons, it's 700,000 tons because people come in here
Have to go
also
somewhere
have to
else.
go there.
Yeah.
So that's gonna limit the lifespan of
Those
some of
other
these other
facilities.
facilities, so this is really a.
So why
not
can't
just
down
our
the
problem,
road,
it's a
yeah.
universal problem.
So kick 'em
And that's why
down.
I know, I feel like I heard, that there was some discussions at the last NISAC conference about this, because it is an Ontario County problem in that we have 100,000 tons and we need to figure out how we're gonna handle it. But we're not alone in that. And, again, depending on what happens with Sonic Meadows and our landfill, there's gonna be some disruption to a lot of communities, who have, quite frankly, just been very okay with sending it away and it's going away. And so I think a lot of communities are gonna be faced with, this discussion.
3 years should be interesting.
We'll be busy.
Well, really, we gotta figure out the end of the year, right? That's basically what you're saying, we gotta figure this out by the end of the year.
Yeah, because we need to
As
know.
far as incineration goes, I mean, there was discussion a number of years ago about building an incinerator at the site out there. But I know there's a lot of objection from people downwind.
Yeah,
They
and
really
there,
didn't like that idea.
and I don't know if you remember
Huge
years
incinerators in
ago.
Maine. Shit, I really Maine.
Yeah, I thought in the earlier presentation, you basically indicated there's no way an incinerator was even an option,
On page two.
couldn't really be permitted ever, so.
Yeah, because I don't know if you remember discussions years and years ago, a company was looking to permit an incinerator. I want to say it was near Ovid, the former Army Depot site. And there was a lot of,
Romulus.
yes, Romulus. Thank you, yeah, that was it.
There was a hell of a lot
There
of
was a
public
lot,
outcry
and
about the
then
incinerator.
as a result of that, legislation was actually written and passed, supported by our representatives, to create, I think it's called the Finger Lakes Protections Act.
Yep.
Which basically says if you meet these 3 things, you can't have an incinerator there. It includes the watersheds you're in, closeness to priority water bodies, and distance to other solid waste facilities. So when MSW consultants overlaid that onto like the map, everything in pink disqualifies as, it meets those 3 requirements, so you can't have an incinerator anywhere in pink. So the yellow is where you could potentially have it, and
Victor.
it's like, yeah, that doesn't make, so maybe Victor? Maybe?
I'm sure the Victorians would be all in
Yeah.
support of an incinerator.
And then I was like, oh wow, that's an unfortunate arrow pointing
Yeah,
right to the lake. The
Yeah.
placement of that arrow is not great, but, so that's where it would be, and it's like, okay, well, realistically, are we gonna put one in Kansas? Like, that does not make any sense. And then Victor, yeah, I mean, potentially you could, but it's really right near like all of our.
I would imagine you get just a wee bit of public outcry
Commercial.
from Victorians, so.
So,
You gotta put them along the coastline. We'll have to see.
That's what I said, it's like, still.
Okay, we're not gonna have
put
an
'em all in Maine.
incinerator, it's just gotta come
Well, you
off
have
the
them
list,
on
it's
Island.
not gonna happen.
yes, there's 3 on Long Island.
They must be very old, I don't know how old they are, but
I think referenced in this report, they did some research, and the last new incinerator to be sited in the United States was 1894, I think, is what they reference in here. So there have been expansions. There have been expansions to existing ones, but there hasn't been a new facility permitted or constructed in states in the country.
how can they do it in Europe?
I think in Europe, it's more acceptable, or people aren't, because they don't have the geography, they don't have the
Land.
No other
land
option.
to dedicate to just be taken out.
But it's not killing people, I mean, you hear about it. Or do they not create as much waste?
I think the
I
Russians
think
could
it's
make a
probably
fortune.
that, I think they don't, I think
We
they're,
got such a disposable economy, I mean,
Yes,
you know, a lot of these agendas at the end of the meeting, they're gonna,
well,
they're very
reserved
much more
forever,
single
you know?
stream recycling in Europe too, they separate everything and have for decades and decades.
we've talked about this, like, it is, when you start talking about this, it's impossible to not go down a million different rabbit holes
Oh, yeah.
about,
Yeah.
you get back to the way we consume things and the way we purchase
Yeah.
things and the way things
It
are
is.
marketed to us, and it's
Yeah.
just,
you
There's a
know.
lot of money
that-
behind that packaging industry, so.
Yeah.
A lot of lobbies, a lot of,
And I will say, I think, I've said it a couple times, publicly that so I've been in the solid waste industry for over 2 decades, 21 years. I've been dealing with garbage, recycling, organics, and I've never seen as much state legislation about these topics as I have in the past few years. I'd say probably cumulative for all the years before it. We're seeing a lot of extended producer responsibility legislation with electronics, paints, carpet is gonna be implemented next year. There was packaging EPR that unfortunately didn't get signed last round, but we're sure it's gonna come up again. California just passed their first textile EPR legislation, and generally what California does, we're like
We're
a
next.
year or so
Yeah.
behind in terms of introducing that type of legislation. So we are seeing the state take a more active role in telling manufacturers, if you produce it, you have some responsibility for making sure it's recyclable or taken back and reused or processed appropriately.
2 years ago, when I was going through college at Alfred, College of Ceramics, divided into several different departments. One of them was glass technology. I had a lot of friends that went that route into glass, manufacturing glass, the science of glass. At that time, in the late 60s, there were still a lot of glass bottle producers in this country. Very, almost none now. It's all plastic. And that whole industry has lost the weight, breakage. I mean, those were big arguments at that time. Use plastic and slam them together, they don't break. And, that whole industry pretty much evaporated in this country. It's all plastic now, or some kind of coated cardboard that resists moisture penetration. And, we've created this problem.
Well, even when
And
you
now
look
no one really wants to look at it.
even when you look at operating a recycling facility like a MRF, you have commodities, right? All the different types of things that we all throw in our recycling bin. Some of it is worth more than other, right? Like the tin, aluminum, metals are always gonna be worth more. But then, so you might make money on those, you're gonna lose money on paper. And so you expect there to be a certain percentage of commodities in an average ton to balance out, like you're hopefully making more than you're losing. And there's information in here on that too, like what an average commodity rate is and what an average ton of recycling is comprised of. But then we look at things like the bigger bottle bill where we're taking metals, we're taking cans out. And things that helped kind of make the commodity money, made those recycling facilities money, we continue to take those out and then want them to process the stuff that they lose money on. And so it's all connected. These are these rabbit holes that we really need to try to think bigger picture, more holistically about how these things are impacted as we go.
I'd love to see if we could sort out clean cardboard though, that, I would like to, because it just drives me insane how much cardboard is used in our society now with everyone getting everything shipped. So it just, I mean, people get cat litter shipped to their house in a
Right.
cardboard.
Everyone's
It's
got that
insane.
little thing.
Why they ship you like something this size in a box about this big?
Yeah, I'd love to see if there's anything we could do to help with that, especially if it's potentially even or worth something slightly when it's separated out.
I would say
Make Amazon take their packages back.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, that's done.
I would say the best indicator probably of how much the community would, or how difficult it is to get people on board with doing what they're supposed to do is Wegmans when they had that failed attempt of sorting everything right there. And it, I mean, that probably lasted maybe 6 months to a year. They had all those different bins and then just got rid of it because nobody was putting anything where it was supposed to go.
It's really, we find you really need to have people there, right? You need to have someone, like, even at our own employee picnic, we have an employee picnic every day, every year. And we're like, we're gonna start food waste, we're gonna make sure we collect it and we get rid of it. And Caitlin Cause they're going, make sure you put this in here, that doesn't go in there, this goes in here. So, people need the guidance too, because especially with recycling, people don't understand it's a market, it's commodities, they change, so we may be able to recycle this year, but not next year, because the mills no longer have a tolerance for it, or they're using a different mill. And so it has to be adaptable, but people like routine, so they think if I've recycled this for the past 5 years, I'm recycling it now. So the education is super important, being able to provide that guidance.
Don't envy you
Thanks for the doom and gloom on a beautiful
Yeah,
Friday.
I
I
can't
hope-
wait for Jim to sit next to the recycling bin and tell everybody where to
Yeah,
put
we're
their
not
stuff.
doing
I would love
Yeah.
that. I would pay
Well,
Jim.
why
to
does
do
like,
that.
we don't have somebody there,
Close
and I
doors.
watched,
Yeah.
I watched him like, fight with the people when they had somebody, a poor
Well,
store teenage girl trying to get people to put their, recycling where it goes, and I watched grown adults fight with them, and that program didn't last long because of it.
You know what works? Charging them more for the stuff that they're not putting in the food waste bin. That's what would work.
so I would just encourage you, I'm sure Supervisor Simpson is open to discussion and feedback, and I think he'll be there, making the decision. So,
You say by the end of the year, there should be some
that is what we've asked. for.
future
That is, that's what.
direction.
Full,
like
pla-
that.
full plan laid out.
Right.
Get to herd all the
You know what, and
supervisors
it doesn't
together.
even need to be a full plan, like quite frankly, we just need to know if there's
Yeah,
gonna be a
keep it
landfill.
open.
And if there's gonna be recycling, because those are the two kind of big pieces, and once we can rule those out or figure that out, we can focus on the other things as well. Like I said, it's not, it's, the landfill takes up a huge amount of this report because it's a big discussion, it's a big volume of material. But talking about food waste and organics and things like that is just important. The state has legislation on that now. We expect that they're gonna continue to like ratchet up who they expect to be diverting food waste and in what volume, so we wanna be able to kind of be ahead of that and be able to provide infrastructure. We already have businesses that are doing that, communities that are doing it. So
The
all those things.
The recycling doesn't stay there, right, though, so there's nothing added height, visual impact or anything like that with recycling, right? So,
Yeah.
so I think most of the people who are against landfill don't want something that's big, tall, ugly, and smelly in their backyard. That's literally like what it is, so I would think that the recycling at least would certainly continue.
Does that report,
Other than trucks.
provide like any details as far as impact for revenues and expenditures, like estimates of like how much, what percentage the tax rate would go up if you get rid of it?
Yeah, so there's so we don't have any estimates for tax rates because Ontario County has already, I think last year was the last year they took all of their lease revenue and took it out of the budget. I think there's a couple $100,000 that still funds our department for this is the last year. And then next year, all of that, so that's already been absorbed. And so there's not gonna be, I don't think, an impact to county taxes other than, like, obviously, we're a customer, so we're gonna have to pay more now to get rid of our waste and things like that. So there will be those operating costs, but in terms of lost lease revenue, the Ways and Means Committee, Sherman Baker, they've already done a lot to absorb that, so we're already there. There is a slide in the back, every community has this, and Caitlin already pointed out, I thought we would fix this, but your C&D number is wrong. So if you look up in the top right corner, that's the waste that came out of your transfer station.
Yeah, that number's low.
It's the city number.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
city number, using your site, not your number, so.
Right.
That kind of shows, if you look down in the bottom left corner, it shows your current system, the cost for transfer station tons is about $70,000. So under the different scenarios,
And that's just for tipping fees, that's not for
Right.
staffing or
Yeah.
any other,
Correct.
that's just for actual disposal of that material.
so if you go down this list, those are their estimates for the various scenarios. So if we continue with a vertical expansion and still operate at 700,000, we're still saying you're almost gonna double because the rates are gonna go up, recycling's gonna go up. A vertical expansion with only half, that's at 350,000 level is 156. If it was a county only, they're estimating you'd pay $190,000 for disposal. There's the transfer station options with, if there was a transfer station and it got sent to these landfills, here's that. And at the very bottom, the last four are to close the landfill. If the landfill were to close and you were to go to Seneca Meadows, they estimate your disposal cost would be $273,000. If you went to High Acres, 227. If you went to Mill Seat, 252. And then they threw like a distant, so that might be like a Chautauqua County, Modern, or Steuben County. And there you obviously have increased transportation costs because it's further away.
An
So-
increase in environmental costs when you're shipping something that far too. So.
And remember those, you have different trucks, you're talking about fuel, you're talking about the driver, right? I think some of the transportation costs are included in there, but not the cost of the driver driving
Yeah,
that
this
truck.
is transportation and disposal. And then in the middle, they have the impact on residents. So right now, residents in our counties pay up at the top, you can see it says low, high. On the low end, residents pay, if I have a subscription service at my house, on the low end, I pay $44 to my hauler. On the high end, I pay $70 a month. And so they've kind of extrapolated that down to say, this is what we're estimating in these scenarios, what those low and high numbers go to.
Which is what, we can't read it from back here, so.
So,
Yeah,
It's actually not that bad.
right, because it isn't.
I mean, when you think about it, the
What is
easiest thing, just put it on the customer,
Well, and part of the reason is
ship out your own
because
trash.
disposal
$100 a month.
costs are only a small portion of what haulers are charging you, right? Because if it's $44 a ton to use the Ontario County landfill and I'm paying $44 a
Right.
month,
That
I'm
makes
paying
sense.
for a ton of waste. No, I'm paying for my contribution. I'm paying for the truck. I'm
Yeah,
paying for the
right.
driver. I'm paying for profit.
Right.
So the disposal cost, the tip fee is actually a very small percentage of what that monthly cost I pay. So it goes down in the sun, if we were to close and go to Seneca Meadows, the low end of that is 53 up to $83. So you're looking at like a $10, $13 difference. And then if you were to close and go somewhere further away, the low becomes $74 a month and the high becomes 117.
But that's a big difference for our residents, because right now, my family doesn't pay anything, we come here once a week and it's great. And that would be $1,000 a year, so
Yes.
it's a big change.
So far, we've been able to absorb costs out there. We haven't gone to pay as you throw. We've had discussion about that and Caitlin was here that. I mean, those costs are gonna fall on the residents one way or another somehow in the future.
Do those numbers reflect the recycling increases?
Is that just,
Or is that just the waste?
Yes, for
I
waste.
do think it does. It should be your total tons, up at the top, it's 7,100 total tons to landfill and MRF.
Okay,
So it should be,
it's both, okay.
So this is a really good
Yeah,
time
so-
sorry, I'm
for
looking at
fall cleaning.
But remember, the transportation cost was $0 per ton, so
Right.
even though the
I
tonnage is
hate to do
included,
that.
there's no cost
Across the
impact,
board, yeah.
whereas if you have a subscription,
Double
they're picking up
price.
both
Right,
recycling, so
Oh,
that
inform my
$44 to $70 you're paying now does also include recycling.
okay.
and then if you're really interested, every town's in here. So you can kind of go through and, the only one you guys might want to look at the city of Canandaigua, but if you are interested, like town of Farmington has a wastewater treatment plant. So right now, you're paying $162,000 for disposal, could go up to closer to $300,000. So that cost is gonna have to go out to the users.
Users for sewer.
So we would just get it.
City can't do the same thing.
Same thing. Yep.
I don't think Farmington has.
Gary, I assume we have
some
other
there.
things to go over this morning?
Yeah, there's supply.
I don't know, I
Or
would be
in their
surprised
collection
if they didn't have any. I don't know.
well, we gotta wrap this portion of the meeting up.
You don't
Just
wanna
one
talk
last
about this
question.
all day?
Right?
We could do it all day.
Well, you know, I was thinking here over the
Trash
years,
talk.
Caleb, when you were here,
That's
I
express.
probably spend more time talking about this topic than any individual project that town's undertaken. I mean, it's talked about, the solutions are so evasive. It's just one final question, if you were able to pull all the organic waste out, is there a place for all that 30%
No.
to go?
Today, no. And that's part
Not
of
at
what
this
we,
point.
that's not at this point, and that's why we want that direction, because there's grants available, there's an interest in the private sector. To expand businesses, we've talked to our economic development folks to try to say like, what can we do to attract this type of business in? We have some potential volume,
Municipal digesters with, you know, cogen possibilities, right?
and we actually have, the option too to do, depending on where the digester is, you can do direct to pipeline, natural gas
Right,
to,
yeah.
instead of the cogen.
Got the electric,
And then the
or
only,
natural gas, right?
the only thing, last thing I'll say is if you haven't seen it, we
For
did
gas, all kinds
set
of
up an
different
entire
things.
website for this.
Yeah.
It's oclandfillfuture.com or .org, both of them work. And it has a study on there, it has podcasts with Caitlin, talking through the contents with MSW consultants. I talk a little bit on there about the landfill history. If you scroll down, if your residents are interested, here is the webinar that you referenced. It was recorded, it's on YouTube, so anyone can listen to it. If you go to, and here's the sections too, because it's a huge document, it's 300 pages. If you wanna look about, like, can we do renewable energy there? Here's some
So
discussion
there's like
about
a
that.
1 page on the 10
Yeah.
page section, so it's sort of an overview. You guys click one more.
And then if you go to community meetings, they're all over, but we did record one too. So if anybody missed it and wants to hear the consultant actually talk about it instead of me, he's a lot more knowledgeable, so.
It's the same
Hard to
content
believe,
as
though.
the webinar you attended.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same presentation.
Thank you, ladies.
Well, thanks for coming in,
You're
I appreciate
welcome.
it.
Yeah, as always, if you have any questions or anything, let us know.
We love trash talking with you.
Yeah,
Somebody have a push underneath.
yeah, I did, yes.
Alright, well, it was nice to see everybody.
Next
Thanks,
time,
guys.
you gotta bring bad news, bring donuts too.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you guys were supplying
Only in a nice
That'd
reusable
be recyclable.
container.
Yeah, we're getting used to people like being
Be day
bummed
old,
when they
Jen.
see us enter a room.
Gonna yell at us.
So
Okay.
I do wanna say one more thing really quickly, just a reminder, we do have that $5,000 in funding available every year to municipalities for new and expanded programs for waste diversion. So if you wanted to do something around like a waste reduction education campaign, we could do like a mailer for town residents or something. And that's available on an annual basis. So
Yeah,
I
and
did wanna
then
remind you of that.
I would add too, not to feel limited by the 5,000 too, because sometimes if you have a project and it's 8,000, we have that reserve, and if it's in line with our goals, we can go and ask for the additional funding.
Sounds good.
Hmm.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Bye, Carl. Thank you.
All right, well, let's move on into the agenda. The Auburn Trail, Jim and I put this on here because this came up in discussion the other day, we were talking about our budget. That there's $50,000 in there for the Auburn Trail, and it was a little unclear how that $50,000 was going to be used. So the whole topic of the Auburn Trail, it's almost like talking about the landfill and solid waste. It got whiskers on it, it's very old, it goes back many years, but you know, how much of it's completed? What are the next steps? How do we get to the point that we don't talk about the Auburn Trail? You know, is it necessary? Is it, you know, what, you know, all those kind of questions, you know, it's
We need to fix it. We are like the only hole in this incredibly long trail that has an empty spot just for the town of Canandaigua.
Yeah, but we have a lot of empty spots in our budget too, so I mean, where do you put the money, you know, that it's gonna benefit the most people, that's
So I
You've
can
been
only speak,
involved with
I
it.
can only speak to the southern portion of the Canandaigua portion of the trail, because I think the northern portion was Fisher was heading that endeavor up. So the southern portion, we got hung up basically trying to get around the airport, which I think you've had some
Yeah,
conversations with
just
Bob
emailed
Minzer.
out with Bob Minzer the other day, so. Or yesterday, I sent the information back, so.
Sounds like we can get the easement or co-location on the outside part of their fence coming
Right.
down Brickyard, but coming across the end of their property.
The
Their
airport property or the?
airport property.
the
That,
Thomas Road there.
No, up North Street,
Yeah.
North Street,
yeah, North, coming up from North Street.
Oh, come up.
Yeah. Yeah, going north, so we gotta go, we go across, where the water quality pond that we built, right, so that berm that has a trail on it. And then it was supposed to cut across what's the end of their runway protection zone. And then tie into Brickyard at north on Brickyard to Thomas, that was basically my leg of the work. So where we're beleaguered is we're basically trying to get easements to get across. Originally, we were going to go kind of like a J on the airport property coming down Brickyard and then coming across the end of the runway. But it was crossing their protection zone. That was like, they had a map out, it was like this red zone, we have to stay out of that. So the next logical location is gonna push us onto what was formerly the German Brothers property, right? And then aside from that, I still need to get one more easement. There's a piece of property that's owned, I think it's just there for the snowmobilers. There's like a snowmobiling trail that bisects that piece of property that kind of cuts over. So I was like, once we have those two easements, I know what I need to do, we just need to survey and then we can finish up what we had to do and then Jim can implement at least that portion of the trail. But then I don't know about like north of Thomas Road, we'd have to bring in Fisher, kind of figure out where they're at. I think they're kind of get hung up with Genetco and
probably somehow, I think.
Canandaigua Country Estates, I think all that stuff kind
Canada
of.
Country Estates is expanding and agreed to have an easement as part of theirs.
I know, but at one point that was part of the whole
Problematic.
yeah.
Along the frontage, not in the back.
Yeah.
Okay, because you were trying to. back,
Yeah.
that was- I
Oh,
never
that's
had-
right, yeah.
The easements that you're talking about, though, Greg, and the southern end here. Actively negotiating them now, or?
Well, that's the thing is I think I don't know if it was the planning board with Doug was taking on some, because we did get one, I think,
Yeah,
across the little,
you got the.
like
easement
it
across
was
the
across
bridge.
Potter or whatever, like that little thin strip, we did pick up, I think, that easement, but
Uptown.
we still have to get that one easement where the snowmobile trail is, snowmobile trail. To tie that in, and then we'd have to get a new easement,
They
because
were
we can't be on the airport
they were in
property
for
going
years.
across
Bridge.
the southern
Yeah,
part.
Yeah, but my point is, so there's two that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Is somebody talking to those landowners to get?
I am not,
You're not,
yeah, I was not engaged.
we
to do
haven't
that.
asked you to.
Yes, correct.
But we did put money in our budget next year for the Auburn Trail. It's not defined where the money's to be spent.
No,
Right.
it was, you guys
We
voted to
took
take
that
it
out.
out.
Well, we added it. We added it, 50 grand, right?
No,
No,
you
we
guys
took it
voted
out.
to take it out.
No, that's what we had it.
We had 50,000, you guys voted to take it out for.
Cause nobody knew what it was
three
for.
yeah. It
If
went
Right.
it went to
for,
just a dollar,
put it back in.
Yeah. But now we're talking about what it could be used for.
yeah.
So
So
what
you
did it
guys would have to
cost?
vote on the 28th to put it back
Put it back
in.
in.
But I just wanna get more, what would it cost to do that, to get those two pieces?
Well, we would need to do an easement. Okay, but we wouldn't normally, we don't want us negotiating with you, you want Jared or, a committee or somebody to go ahead, or John, right? To negotiate with those individuals to obtain easement. But we would have to draft an easement for at least that portion across the former German Brothers, where we had to tie it all together. And then eventually, we'd have to resurvey, because we've obviously changed the alignment from what we started with, and then redo the plans.
Okay, so what would the cost be? We don't know if the people might want money for. the
Yeah,
grant
let's just say
easement,
the easements are like the one that we're talking about is probably $800 for going across the end of or the German Brothers one going across the end of the runway. I think we've already drafted the easement for. I have to check my records. I think we've already drafted the easement for the airport for the coming down Brickyard Road, so I think that one's okay. And then I think we've already drafted the easement for the snowmobile property as well, but I don't know if anyone's ever done anything with it. So, but if we did have to do that one, Chuck,
Yeah.
that would, it's probably another $800 easement, it's not that big of a deal.
So, yeah, and that's what we talked about was that if we didn't at that point have anything defined to have $50,000 in the budget, probably wasn't worth it, but that smaller things like this that come up could probably just be absorbed into
Well, as
our
long
budget
as,
is.
and we haven't
Yeah.
already drafted, you don't
Yeah.
have the cost of doing it, so.
It could also come out of the conservation easement, what is that, a reserve or a capital budget, but there's a conservation easement, I would think we could use it for that too. So,
We'd just like to get to a point where we have definition and what we're,
Well, that information from Bob Minster that the airport said no go on
Yeah,
that part,
so that-
that's new, so like, that's where I was like, okay, now we know at least we have to move to this other
we
property.
can move.
So what, it's coming, yeah, thank you for pulling that up, Jim.
So basically, it's gotta come across here someplace.
Yeah, I
around.
gotta cross,
It can't
is
come
it
up
two,
here.
do I gotta cross two properties then?
Yeah, you got.
So the
one,
snowmobile
two,
property is
three.
right there, that's that one,
That little teeny, what's the scrawny little loopy
This
thing that
is-
goes up and then,
This one?
no, up north of there, that thing.
the
This
little
is-
strip that used to be
Oh,
the peanut rail,
That's the railroad.
That's the peanut line, okay, who owns that?
Potter, well, it used to be Potter.
And it's too hard to follow the
Actually, no
peanut
one owns
over
it.
to north and then north up. Cause that's kind of like made to be a trail, but
Potter owns it,
Yeah, Potter
and
owns that one,
then this here's owned by, Rankin Farnsworth, and this is owned by, Peter Brew.
so why wouldn't we just do
so I need two
peanut
easements.
down to north and then sidewalk north? The
Well, you
north
three,
needs a
yeah,
sidewalk
they
anyway,
crossed here.
That's not an easy ask to go down that peanut line.
okay,
And you already have the trail coming up the berm, if he zooms in, you can kind of see it where we built the berm on the town property.
Over here,
Yeah,
Okay,
so we already have the trail running up there,
this is right up here.
so we just need to come across those two parcels.
okay.
So there's two easements, I apologize, and then, like I said, the third one, there he is, oh, we did get it.
Yes. Look at the blue cast,
Blue.
very nice.
Are we all signing this later or what?
Oh, I got my pen. That's kind of a Bill's blue
Sorry.
right there.
Yeah, I know.
Talking about the Auburn Trail, Jared.
Yeah, we just got, hey,
No,
we're on
I ran
item
into-
number one,
No,
perfect,
I ran into two
Carla,
friends in the
yeah,
parking lot. and
good.
Talked for a while.
You just missed all the landfill joy.
Yeah.
We were trash talking while you were in here.
So, you got Brew, you got Farnsworth, you got Potter. you got
We
Cross.
already got the easement on Potter though.
Okay,
That one, that was obtained through the planning board.
I'm sure Peter Brew will be easy one.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we were,
That's
yeah,
what we were talking about.
We were talking about
yesterday.
That's why I'm like,
I think you already
gee,
gave
that peanut line looks really attractive right there.
but it's not really anything that he can really use, but I mean, if he did have to pay for an easement, I guess, you know, it works, like if that's the last little leg.
Where is his portion of it?
Right here, this right here.
So we would have to, if we zoom in there just a touch, Jim.
So what's the buffer
So
for
we-
that fence on the airport?
So we gotta come up here and then shoot across here, so we just gotta stay off their property.
And
We
that's
just
the
gotta
airport
stay
right
off.
on the other
Off the
side.
airport
See this,
property
we gotta stay
yeah.
off this.
Okay.
So then
This
we
is their buffer zone.
And then we can come up across, this is the snowmobile property I was talking about here, like it's up on the Brickyard, and then we chase around,
Right.
basically along Brickyard Road. Going north.
On the west side or east side,
West side.
by the airport.
Yes. As long as we stay outside their fence line, they were fine.
Yeah, as long as we,
Where's their fence?
So-
Can
well, they have
we
a
go
fence over
slightly
here.
inside?
Their fence is back here, but this
But
is
there's a
their-
fence along Brickyard.
Yeah, and this is their clear zone.
Cause
To
that
the
might help
property
us with Peterborough if we can be just on that borderline there.
Oh, no, you'll be on Bruce property.
We have to?
Yeah, the airport already said you will not be on our property.
Yeah, they won't.
They said no,
Because you could have vehicles on it someday.
so.
So there's no good reason to add anything back into the budget for next year.
Not at least until I think you have the easements in place, because then once you have the easements in place, then I can come back to you and let you know what the added survey costs and rework costs
Any
would be.
idea what they would do,
It's
or
not,
scale?
nothing, I don't know, it could be like 10 grand or something like that, you know, nothing crazy.
It can come out of the open space fund, I think. That's where it can come out of. If we need to pay
Oh,
for
is it?
easements.
A home for the bills, or,
There's $1 million in the open space
Yeah.
fund.
but is that, it's a trail, it's not,
We're gonna call it open space.
you call it
Don't put a
anything.
roof on it, don't put a roof on it.
You know,
Sounds open to me.
all right,
That's it.
We gotta
But
find
that would
some way to
that would
spend
at least
$1
get that
million.
portion up to Thomas,
Yeah.
yeah,
and then we just have to figure out, yeah, with Fisher to work to. Yeah.
well, that would give people up in that Thomas Road area access through the Auburn Trail down to,
They'd actually come down to,
Oh,
yeah,
That'd be nice.
then
'Cause we-
from Thomas Road up though, we have what, an 8-foot trail on the east side of Brickyard
Yeah.
going past all those,
I don't think it's 8.
that 8.
It
Yeah,
needs to
I
be,
think that's the problem with that way,
it
it
has to
doesn't,
be 10 for it to be official for
The
Auburn.
gravel trail in front.
We asked
Yeah.
for, back when, we had came before the town board,
right,
because it was originally going to be single family homes.
right,
We went back to this, but we
It's like 8 foot
negotiated
wide.
with, their attorney there.
right.
We wanted that strip out there, so I thought we had 8 foot.
I mean, it might, but I do think it has, I
Auburn
think it's
Trail
supposed to be
requires
10.
10
Yeah, oh, yeah,
to be
yeah,
official.
right, but we had,
Yeah,
so you
I
had,
just remember it was
80%.
narrow, this was too narrow, right?
We
But
call it
only
the
for
new
measure.
Auburn Trail.
Yeah.
so that would take it up. But then the next barrier is
Golf course.
up
You
around.
gotta get across the golf course, property, cause they have a little.
Yeah.
Flag that's,
Access.
yeah,
Yeah, Lou says absolutely not.
yeah, so there's a gap,
I mean, if we have a fabulous trail leading straight up to various gaps like that, eventually I think just gonna have so many people tromping across and bikes and things that they'll be like,
Some people
okay.
just gonna walk across
let's
it.
re-
anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not that much traffic on the road.
Yeah.
Can we walk out of the road? and go?
Right.
All right, well, that's a clearer picture, so if we have to do any survey work next year, we have a place to get the money.
Okay.
So we leave it at a buck and Auburn Trail.
Good job.
I don't know how many years I
You
got
fixed
left
it. Good job,
in
you
life
fixed
here,
it.
but I'd love to see this thing.
well, you were on that,
I would
you were
just
on
get
that
out-
committee,
No.
you were on that committee.
I just
When
got out
I
there
first joined
with
the
a
town
Bobcat.
board.
Just go out there with a Bobcat,
That's
and
That's-
finish it.
That's how we got the trail on Mill Cheshire Road is the,
This thing
Jim
goes-
Packer just went, we're gonna have a trail, so there it is.
15 years old now, I mean,
Mhm.
almost through high school.
Yeah.
All right, next, upland and Oneida, we wanted to talk a little bit about that just came up during our budget discussion. Too. The money, the whole plan, what can we have to spend ARPA money next year and use that to get as much done as we can and then start looking for unexpended fund balance or whatever to, finish the thing off. But with, one of the reasons we put it on here is what can we get done and when can we do it? Can you do it without closing the upland area, closing the park, whatever, you know? Jim, you're gonna be doing the work, so
Yeah,
we have a final number from
Yeah,
MRB.
the most recent plan from,
Are we gonna do anything after Halloween at Oneida this year?
no, because we don't have secret on,
We don't have that done.
we have
we're working,
secret.
yeah, we gotta get secret, that's true.
So I asked Greg Greg asked Lance to get seeker going for Oneida. Hope to have it on the October board meeting, so we can start that process. Um,
Do we need anything else along with that? Do we do the SHPO and the other things after that, or is part of that?
That comes out after.
Comes out after.
That's next after.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be, yeah.
All right.
And I would say no. Cause we still have to get the Department of Health to approve the septic fields, the water main. So,
Yeah, we get,
It'd
there's
be nice
various
if we could do
regulatory things.
something before May, but anything.
But you're talking about staging some of the materials up there.
I would bring them here, I would
Access them.
stage them there.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, we could buy
Or
stuff
buying
for the
stuff.
road base, we could get that kind of things. But as far as, we don't have a stormwater plan approved yet,
Right,
so,
Do we have a plan?
no,
I don't, yeah, I don't think,
no, we
I
don't
don't
have
think,
one.
I don't think it's that far, I think it's,
No.
we've got like basically creating, I think we have the stormwater figured out, I think the septic is pretty well figured
Basically a
out as well.
sequence of what we're
We
gonna do,
just-
how we're gonna do
We
it.
I gotta get the water main on the fence with it, so you, I gotta get you that for it, yeah, I'll try to do that this afternoon.
That's right. Well, point is, it's like, I think you're starting. Maybe, we could start in 25 sometime,
Right.
we have to wait for. Not the springs, we got the. Spotted bat and something else, we gotta wait for
The long-eared bat,
long-eared bat.
yeah, I gotta wait for that one to clear,
Or
You can't
anything,
clear trees, seriously, you can't clear trees
right,
during certain times of the year.
we have to do it during the winter.
Yeah,
are any of these items included in any open project with you though, like stormwater?
Yeah, no,
You know,
that's all, we're
we
working on.
could. Cut trees down, we just
Yes, we
couldn't
can.
remove the stumps.
Right,
You know, so like, we could cut through,
That would be good.
cause we don't have it, cause this, without the SWIP, we can't really have any ground surface,
Right.
right?
but we could
That's good.
survey, we could work on
At
that.
least.
Because we know where the
Tops off,
road's
So we know where the road's gonna go.
Yeah, we could remove we could do that this way.
Do some initial clearing,
Right.
that's.
That's something we can.
Well, that's, I mean, that would be nice too, because I think, you know, half of the residents of that area are gone in the winter anyway. and I
So
think
that's
we're gonna have
something
a lot of
else.
questions doing that in like
Few less questions.
June.
Yeah, Okay.
John, did my email come through you?
I haven't seen it yet.
I sent it to your, not town, you said send it to your town email. Have you checked those yet? I sent it this morning. Just let me know. If not, I'll send you as
Is
well.
that the yesterday?
you.
things?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let me know if you need anything yesterday.
You know, we could bring the water across, tap it, and have a valve there.
Oh, yeah, we
Just,
could
you know,
shoot across the
yeah, we
road.
could do,
Did you?
See you, John.
Okay.
Have a great
there are
weekend.
small things
Yeah.
that can be done to have progress, they're not like major steps, so.
Can you stick him up on top or no?
I mean, I can
You know, we
check,
drag it up there whenever you want.
I can
Let's do
see
that.
like how soon the SWIP
I-
can be ready though.
I think that it annoys the crap out of people.
It'd be
I
nice,
would get
it
that
would
up
be
there.
nice to get that.
We built
Under questions.
a tow hitch for the wheel loader to bring it up there.
I would get that up there sooner rather than later.
Do that or sell it.
No.
You might be able to make money.
If we could sell that for 120,000.
We, what we might do is we might bring it up to where the
Put the assessor in there.
out portable outhouse is, kind of put it there.
Yeah.
Just to be not in the way.
Yeah,
You
Right,
follow what I'm saying, like, we
Yep.
want to move it again,
right.
but we would put it on a solid surface, so the
Yep.
tires don't sink. Put it there, and then, right,
I think it'd be nice to get it at least over there.
you know,
so
that's
it's
something we
not-
could tell me, like, we can do small things just to have some sort of progress.
Yeah, if you could clear the trees and put that guy over there.
You know, that could be something after Halloween or not, where
That'd be awesome.
Where
To do that.
Greg, we get hold of Coker,
Mhm.
get the survey of center line of the road and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
width that we need, and then go from there.
And
Just
clearing
do
the trees, I think that'll be good for the education with the public too, because I think there was a lot of confusion that we were taking this road through the entire Ononda uplands and not just that little portion that we're planning to do. I think once we've done that, we'll get a little bit more buy-in, you'll get a lot more questions, hey, what's happening up there, and more interest in the project in general, so.
Greg, the SWIP is that? You'd be giving us a proposal to do that then? or-
No, I'll check, I think that was in our design.
Is this-
Yeah, so they were right there.
We still have money left.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I've got, because we gotta do the septic, get the septic approved. So the septic, I think the design is, they did the perks already. So the septic is probably pretty much done, so it's getting into ready for approval, I gotta get the water main on the drawings, and get that to the Department of Health, for approval. You know, the Department of Health will probably be 60, 90 plus days at least for them to review
Oh, yeah.
and comment, right, let alone an approval, so. That's gonna push us into, you know, sometime in 25 before we can have those okays.
Can we spend the money allocated in time?
Yeah,
That's Jim.
just
Jim's
600,000 or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
We got to what, the end of next year? right?
26.
my-
And
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah, I mean,
26.
I can,
Yes,
we can haul in all the material I have in store here, like stone base. Geogrid, the large, medium stone fill that we're using on the side for stormwater. Yeah, we can buy materials and start eating that up, okay? So,
Makes
I mean, we
sense.
can buy the water main materials.
Mhm.
You know, like things like that, just to have them here
Just to have them.
to use the
So we
the
don't, we
cost.
don't get pinned it
Right.
down if something happens and we don't have the money spent.
Right.
Yep.
So,
Cost will probably go up in the interim too.
Yeah.
yeah, but you know, those are just, you know, we can buy the septic field, the tank, stuff like that, so.
Okay.
And that
My
can help,
prices have been pretty stable.
that could help too, because it'll be here ready to go, so the
Yeah,
moment
so
you pull the
it's
plug,
here.
you can just go,
Right.
so. Instead of having to hope that something arrives in time.
Right, but like, those are things that we can do.
Might be able to, yeah, once the SWIP is in, then we can get into the stormwater.
Stormwater stuff.
You could sell the wood.
I don't know how.
How big are the trees that you're taking down? I don't know.
Big, there's some big trees in there.
No, I mean, like more than 24-inch diameter.
I don't know.
Probably.
Cause it all depends. My dad he took down 40 trees in his yard, so it all depends. Like you have to look at the tree and just see like how clean the trunk is, and then, you know, what type of.
Yeah, there are guys that
the-
will come out and
Mhm.
pay you for them, so.
Yes, as long as what's, you know, there is worth it. And it's gotta be logged the right way.
Sure.
We had Jeff going to cut it up for firewood, so.
He's got
I mean, that's all, there's gonna be a lot of trees.
We're gonna have
Yeah.
an awesome
The
ring
bonfire
of
next
fire
summer is
the
gonna
year
be
after that,
amazing.
right?
One farm.
Let's do 2 ring of fires just for
That's gonna be,
Those are LED trees?
fun.
no, we go full gas. Throw
You know,
diesel,
those LED things are
throw a
plastic.
couple diapers in there and some motor oil and call it good. Call it a fire.
I don't know if the
Don't
old
be down
fires
with-
were recyclable more than the LED flare.
The year the couch, it was all couches was the next year.
It was never all.
All right, so there's some direction and guidance
Yeah,
to keep it moving. Good.
yep.
And you guys wanna play with toys, send them up to, on to Uplands to go.
Next was North Road information discussion.
Mhm.
We plan on putting that in our budget and
Yeah, so we were talking yesterday too, because it's gonna require a public hearing. We were talking about it being worth probably having the public hearing for the project at the same time as the public hearing for the budget. So,
I think we're gonna effort the seeker for that project at the same time we're doing the Ananda.
Mhm.
We'll probably process both at the same time.
yeah, so it'd just be a matter of putting the word in, the correct word into the announcement that goes out on the 21st for the public hearing of the budget, also included as a budget hearing on this
A hearing on
specific
this.
project. So just gotta figure out, I don't know what is required for a proper announcement in that, but
Yeah, I got a call on Chris hasn't called me back.
Yeah,
So
Chris will
I'll give him a call again.
They'll have to tell us the wording, because it's gotta match up.
Right.
And the notice versus what we're saying, and then with that. We have a public hearing on both. At that same time, in the meantime, we've got as much. We're gonna have as much positive publicity about the need going forward in the next 2 weeks.
yeah, and I don't,
Stories, information, traffic.
And MRB can put together a project informational webpage. That way you guys can just link it, and we can put all of our relative information in there. Obviously, we can coordinate with you guys, make sure we all like it before we make it public, but we can do that for that project. That would be it, that would do that, that's a no charge type thing, we can take care
I
of that.
mentioned it, I think Jared or Terry, but I think sometime we should use the church on North Road, to at least have a information meeting with the public.
It's a great idea.
That's what I'm thinking, like, cause,
And the school too, we could use the school.
yeah, I'm sure, well, the school will be part of those seekers, so.
Between now, are you thinking?
I mean, I would probably, let's get through the public hearing of the Bonnie and make sure this all goes through budget
Yeah. And
first.
then we can do
I
it.
mean, I'm assuming it's going to, after that, I think we should, you know, maybe after the first year playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's.
Get through the holidays, and then after the first year, things will slow down, cause we're not gonna start till May at the earliest.
No,
So if we did something in January. Ish, February, so we can,
And the numbers are gonna be a little different because, and we're discussing, so, I sent some information of BDP.
Yep.
BPD,
No,
BDP.
there,
Bernie.
there's three,
Bernie-
those
Bernie
two
P.
both
Don-
exist.
BP.
Bernie P. Donegan,
Yeah.
BPD.
And they, so they can start coming up with the numbers, at least some estimates to be able to put into the budget. But when we talk, we actually gotta take the top coat out separately,
Right,
because that's not gonna make a 20-year.
I still have to talk with Chris and make sure that's all kosher.
Yeah,
So that's my other reason for calling them, but basically, we have to, your loan can only be as long as the probable period of use. So a top coat, you know, can only really get 10 years, so, but yeah, I didn't want that to be the tail that wags the dog in this particular situation, so. Everything else that we would be putting in the ground would be a minimum of 20 years, for a probable period of use, so.
That's why I
We
can't
might
get-
have to pull that, if we can pull that out, that would be the way to kind of be the workaround.
That's why I can't get a 15-year car loan.
yeah, so,
Maybe on a
so
Toyota.
I let them know that BDP. And, so they're just waiting on the new estimate if we get that, to then get the numbers, so, and really, it's next week that I gotta get it all done and into the Encode system to have ready, because once we publish the announcement on the 21st, that's when the preliminary budget should be, as it's going to be for public hearing, with those numbers in it, whatever the tax rate is gonna.
What was the number you had, Jen, for, I mean, it that old, I mean, it was
60.
like 20 cents above the 87.
Oh.
Oh, we were more than that, well,
Isn't it
I think it was like $1,
106?
yeah, maybe
It's like
somewhere
106
around there,
instead of
$1.08.
18.
Yeah,
In year one.
that first year.
First
yeah,
year.
Just thinking about that.
But that was
And I
just,
think
again, that was
just
all
on the top, I think
estimated
it was like
Yeah.
on a
180,
3.25% interest
Well, that's
rate.
awesome.
and-
Yeah,
It's
I
about
was
a
gonna
quarter.
take it up
so,
It's gonna take it up about a
It's
quarter.
like
30 cents over where we are.
So are we gonna straight up
One
create a
is
capital
77.
project that puts a certain amount
Okay.
into it then for this? We probably should,
okay,
for the
Well,
North Road.
as a bid.
So if we're
number.
if we're adding that
we'll
much
just
to the
ask.
tax.
Ju-
bring it
yeah,
in,
that's the plain number
we
100,
should
so that's.
Probably have a
Yeah.
specific
Okay.
capital project for the North Road.
Okay, so
That
that
is
was,
starting
yeah,
to
normal
fund
asphalt would have
in
been around like
with
80
that.
to 85.
Yeah, it's gonna
so
be
you're
its own
about
separate,
$20
well, we
a
do
ton.
have a
Yep.
capital project.
Oh, we did.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's one there
Might be
that's.
the-
But
it's
we don't have
something.
any lines in there for funding a band or a bond, so I mean, I'm just, we should probably allocate that specifically into there.
Yes, once the
I don't
budget
remember
goes
what it was-
through
yeah, I
and
don't
such,
remember
then
what it
the,
was off the
then the
top of my head,
account will have to be created so that when the revenue starts coming in to pay for that band, it gets put
Straight
into that account. But I wouldn't do that until we get the actual adopted budget.
Yeah, no, I know,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we need to do that.
Well, that's gonna be a topic of concern for some people in the town.
Yes, it will.
Almost 50% increase in tax rate, so.
Well,
Going back to
But
last
but,
year's, it's going back to last year's tax rate.
yeah,
right?
but,
It
yeah,
is,
it was
basically.
$1 or $2 or something for
Hope you
like 4
enjoyed
years in a
that,
row.
folks.
There's $1 in 2023.
But that's where you break it out and you say, you say that we know, you break it up and say this of your tax rate, this is your operations, this is your highway. And this is your highway and this is the North Road bonding, so these three numbers add up to.
Yeah, this is the rate if you want us to do absolutely nothing in the town at all and just continue to operate without anything extra. Or this is what it's gonna be if you want us to do actual projects that builds the town.
If you don't care about children and
Safety.
veterans walking on North Road, if you don't care about veterans and you don't care about kids in school walking on North Road. That's,
This is
Yeah,
the
it
budget
just
for
goes
you.
back to the whole,
Yeah.
people want things, but they don't wanna pay for it,
Okay.
and it's just the messaging that really matters.
yeah, so that's what, so we got 2 weeks to get out.
Okay, cool.
Takes us to the end of the agenda.
Anybody have any questions about, I know I missed the transfer discussion, the landfill discussion?
Yeah, what do
You
you
guys
guys?
have any questions?
Yeah, what do you do about it? Yeah, what do you do about it?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I-
the budget.
You know, what
It's all on the supervisor.
what I gained from all that always is that, you know,
Yes.
obviously we can't completely eliminate the landfill. I mean, I think that's just stupid. We all would like to not have it there, but it's just stupid. So I think your options are just that county only, the halfway point or the full that it is, but I think we need to make it clear to them, you should always do the recycling's gonna have to continue happening.
That'll stay, the MRF will stay there.
So that is, I think that's an
Is there
obvious.
any
Or who runs it?
consensus on the board? or-
Yeah, honestly, it depends on the day. And it depends on where things are. There are times that I've been dead one way thinking this is the way everybody's gonna vote. And then it's like, no, it's gonna be the other. And then even conversations with somebody yesterday, another supervisor whose point was, but if we're running and operating it, we know that it's being done correctly and it's gonna be safe and it's done well, and it's $8 million that comes into the county every year for that. So that's that point. I mean, that's hard to get, it's hard to look past that. We take care of it, but it's $8 million. And then you have probably about 3 or 4 who are just shut it down, don't care what happens to it. That's what they ran on. And that's
It's
Geneva.
not realistic.
No, and that's really, you know, friends from Geneva and those areas there. I think, and this is where if you talk to anybody about this, have them go on the website and have them send me comment. Because there's a separate section about the landfill on the website, the report's on the website, asking for comment is on there. So then I know, because I think the most logical, we have to walk away from the landfill as it exists right now. Because we can't touch it after 2028. If we touch it, if they close it and we touch it, then it's all on us if there's any spill down the road. We gotta walk away from that building. That's location completely. But have some sort of county, whether we take our own garbage or whether everything's funneled there and then we transfer it somewhere else, depending on what's cheaper. You know, and most economical.
Well, cost to our residents are gonna go up.
They're gonna
And
go.
that's just the way it is.
And we're gonna have to decide, because our costs are gonna go up. That's gonna be the time where we have to decide as a board, are we now pay to throw, or are we more expensive transfer station tags and have a system to really enforce it? So instead of, I don't know, free, we build it up to $75 or $100 or $150 a year for your tag.
I think we have to start doing that, or it's
We've
gonna
gotta
be a
get-
massive shock between free range, zero,
Yeah.
nothingness to
Yeah,
$1,000 a year.
Well, that
$50
also
$50 a
forces
month for waste.
level of responsibility, it puts it on,
Right.
you know, I mean, you want, tags gonna cost you $100 a year. At our current, the way we're operating now. If you keep increasing the amount we're putting in there, tag's gonna be 150, 200.
Right.
Put some responsibility
Yeah,
on people.
I mean, that's where Manchester and others are, it's weighted.
Yeah, we've been there.
I know
We've talked about that.
we've talked about these other things before, but
Ad infinitum.
I know, we should have a decision within the next 2 months. So by the end of the year, the board will have come hell or high water a vote,
Well,
one
we-
way or the other. And then it's, the vote will either be, don't do anything, close it completely, or transition to something else. And then that gives us 2 years to transition to something else. Because another thing, some of the city supervisors who don't deal with the town side of things, they need to understand that you can't just turn the switch off and say,
Yeah.
we're done, we're turning the lights off
Yeah.
and leaving. We need 2 years, we need 25, 26, and half of 27 to transition to a new program.
I didn't know that the city of Geneva doesn't even offer pickup in any way, shape or form. They have no disposal whatsoever. It's all just private and
Well, what I think, one impact that people probably, I haven't heard yet, I mean, maybe it's been in the discussions, is that to realize that as costs go up for getting rid of the trash, it's actually probably gonna lead to more illegal dumping
Yeah,
places,
True.
and
so.
that's gonna happen more.
So I think we need to make plans for starting next year, charging and enforcing the tags at least, because we're gonna need it, whatever we do, we're gonna need to step people into whatever it is anyway, so
It's
it's.
gotta be gradual, we don't wanna be like Victor and
I
go
think,
100
yeah,
bucks
you
a
wait
year.
till the board makes that decision,
So,
and then you formulate a plan.
Yeah.
But everybody's gonna get their tags in January.
No, they don't.
no, they don't.
Well, they should be,
I'll go with that, but they,
but that's, I think this is when they're due again, because they were 2-year tags. I think.
They're 1 year, we
Are they
kinda
1
let it
year?
ride.
these run out this year.
We weren't so sure what we we're gonna do.
yeah,
That's okay. Nobody else
Nice,
does
I can
either.
tell you
I
exactly
lost
where
it.
my tag
Nobody
is.
knows, nobody knows.
Yeah.
Well, it's
that-
why we should probably do stickers, so, you know.
A year ago, we-
The problem is, you can't see it behind the tin,
Mhm.
behind them.
yeah,
We left
We're
the
gonna have
last
to, I
tag
think
one
we're
for
gonna,
next
we
one.
talked about this before, we're gonna do stickers for the
yeah.
scanner.
Oh, we have ideas, it's just
We could get a, we
So
could
you
get
gotta-
a
I think you're gonna
plate
be
reader.
moving everything, like, over here.
We can get a plate reader.
Or if I did,
I know I got a free set of scales.
No, listen, I'm serious, we could do a plate reader.
We've talked about it.
it, yeah, we wanna do RFID tags.
And
Yeah,
What do you do then when that guy doesn't live in the town?
Shows up.
And plate reader says to the guys over here, in town.
Yeah.
So what are those guys supposed to do?
well, that's the problem.
And
Yeah,
we have high
That's where
school
we-
kids.
but that's with anything, you know,
Yeah, and we have high school kids and.
You still
others.
have your badge?
I have one that says retired.
I'm
So-
sure Keith
what do you do
Gucci
on
would be
Saturday
all
morning?
up working.
Well-
I don't know about that.
And I made the statement when Carla and Caitlin were still here. This topic has already been discussed in this room more than any project we've ever taken on, any. It's, as Carla said, there's a million.
Have a gate.
We just need to pull,
Interesting.
we need to pull the plug out there.
it's like the
car
So,
washes.
so if it lifts one way, it means exit, if it lifts the other way, you can go.
So let me know your thoughts between now and within the next month, what feelings do you have about it, except for you? Like you, but I don't care about you on this one. So let me know. I know, he's a sharp dressed man. So let me know your thoughts, and then I will use those as I take everything back. And I'll be attending the committee meetings for the next 2 months about the landfill. About where we're going with that, the PQ meetings. So I'll be going to those, because that will be the discussion. So any information you can give me or pass through to me, I'll share.
County only.
Another-
Yes,
That's what.
I honestly, I think it should, from my perspective, I think with the cost, it should continue taking in outside trash, because the cost is so huge if we switch to county owned. And I am concerned about it being,
Well, as long as you
you
get somebody
know,
to operate
about
though, right?
Casella not operating it and
They won't
and
operate
what would happen
themselves.
if we're, you know,
unless they're paid to operate it.
I mean, they just had some slides over there, you know, I'm like,
Right, unless
we
just
don't know
pay
what the
them
hell
to
we're
do
doing
that.
with that.
But you continue with them operating it, so they're involved, so you don't violate that clause in the original
Yeah.
contract.
But they don't wanna do that with a
Well,
county level.
If you put enough money on the table, they do.
Right.
I mean, business is business, they're gonna, you gotta wait. Really,
There are gonna be some interesting discussions.
It'd be nice if we could do
Well,
RFPs for 2 different scenarios, and I don't know if that's a possibility or not.
Another impact of just shutting it down and going to subscription-based trash is gonna be the roadways, quite frankly, when you have more heavy equipment traveling the roadways, picking up everybody's trash.
Yeah.
It's gonna end up costing us more money as well.
There's some, I know Farmington, contracts with specific haulers, so they only have in some of their developments.
Single hauler?
Yeah, they have a single hauler system,
Well, like that,
you know, it's,
Yeah,
getting
RFPs too.
RFP and then somebody just
we have
comes
like
in.
3
and
garbage
just-
trucks that come through our neighborhood.
And they have,
Every
Set
week.
day.
and they have a set
vendors.
day and they have a set pattern.
Yeah. That's a
Um,
good idea.
I don't know.
Good luck with that, talk to the people at the bus garage on that though. I'm trying to get, we have a huge town with a lot of rural areas.
Gary, you wanna add this?
Yeah, so.
I got us off
Gary's
track.
done. Got it, Gary.
Very good.
We're somewhere in Missouri.
I second that.